Hi and welcome back to Garden Ninja. Now today's video is going to be all about understanding your soil type and why it's so important in the garden. So come on, let's get cracking. If you've not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you hit the red subscribe button below, where you'll get access to over 120 garden design hints, tips and hacks, and best of all, it's free, so subscribe today. Now soil is the life force of any garden, and more often than not people just overlook it and they don't really give it much consideration, but you really should, because by understanding the soil type that you have in your garden you can make far better choices about the kind of plants that are going to grow there, and also make better garden design considerations about how to create a really amazing garden. Now soil is a living, breathing organism. It shouldn't be confused with dirt or dust. It's living and it's alive, and we need to treat soil with the kind of compassion and enthusiasm that we treat our plants with, because soil's an organic material and it's full of all sorts of bacteria, microbes, bits of bedrock and dirt that have broken down and worked into this beautiful, rich matter. And it's the life force of plants, because plants rely on soil both to anchor themselves to the ground and also to uptake moisture and nutrients, which are the two key things that plants need before they start to photosynthesize, grow, flower and look amazing in your garden. Now there are three types of soil, so let's look at them in a bit closer detail. Now garden soil comprises of three main particles, and those are sand, clay and silt. So the perfect soil mix is usually a blend of them, and most gardens feature a blend of these different particles that make up soil. The perfect blend is 40% sand, 40% clay and 20% silt. But more often than not, garden soils will be in favour of one of those particles more heavily than another, so we describe soils as either being sandy, silty or clay. I'm going to walk you through how those three different soil types will feel and react in the garden so that you can make better plant choices. So the first type of soil is sandy soil, and this is when the majority of those particles are sand-based. Now sandy soil has the benefits of warming up really quickly in the year. It's free draining, so it doesn't hold on to too much moisture, and it's easy to work because those particles are quite gritty, they're quite large particles. The drawbacks of sandy soil, however, are that you might be prone to drought. Because it's so free draining, in a heat wave or in summer, you may find that you're having to water your plants a lot more. So the beauty of sandy soil is it's easy to work with and it's easy to identify. So if you pick up a handful of sandy soil and give it a bit of a squish, it should feel gritty and kind of fall away from your fingers. The next type of soil to cover is clay soil, and people often consider clay to be a real drawback, but I want to change your opinion on that, because it's not a drawback having clay soil if you pick the right plants. So clay soil has much more smaller particles compared to sandy soil, so it sticks together a lot quicker. But it also holds onto nutrients, so it's an incredibly rich soil. The drawback is, because those particles are smaller, they get fudgy and stick together, and they retain a lot of moisture. So it's a heavy soil to work, and it's a wet soil. So if you're planting free draining plants that like really arid conditions, they're just not going to like clay soil. So it's worth bearing that in mind. And the last soil type is silty soil, and it's probably the rarest soil. You usually find it near things like riverbanks and where a river has worn away, and then you've ended up with this lovely silty rich soil. Silt particles are absolutely tiny, but unlike clay they don't stick together as much, but they do form almost like a soapy texture. Because they're so fine, they're really prone to compaction. So if you work your soil a lot and it's predominantly silty soil that you're working with, it will erode and get damaged really quickly. So it's worth bearing that in mind. But for the majority of UK gardens, it's going to be a mix between sandy, clay and silt particles. and it's just understanding how each of them work within the garden soil. In reality, most gardens may have a number of different soil types within your garden space. So it's worthwhile going out with a spade and digging up from different parts of the garden and trying to identify what particle is in the majority in that soil. If it's really gritty and free draining, it's more than likely going to be sandy based. If it's heavy and fudgy, it's probably going to be clay based. And you might have different soil types around the garden. So by working these out in advance, before you buy your plants and start your design, you can work out exactly what's going to work in those conditions. And you're not going to be disappointed by trying to grow prairie-based flowers that want full sun and free draining conditions in a heavy, fudgy clay soil. Now, the best way to improve your soil texture is by adding organic matter. And this could be well-rotted manure or homemade compost. And what that will do is it will help open up the soil structure. So if you've got really clay-based soil, that organic matter will help add air, which will then help it free drain better. If you've got sandy soil, the organic matter will hold onto moisture and help it retain nutrients. So whilst it's not going to completely flip your soil type from one to the other, it will help improve your soil if you're finding you're having a few problems with the soil that you've got in your garden. But as always, you should be working with nature and making small tweaks and really considering your plant choice to make the most out of your garden. Now, it's important to also state that you don't want to overwork your soil, because if you're going to walk on it, use heavy machinery, dig it over every season, all you're going to do is compact that soil. You're going to increase the likelihood that it's probably going to become more water retentive because there's nowhere for the water to go. And it's also bad news for all the bacteria and microbes in there, because you're just compressing it, pushing all the air out. It makes it hard to work with, your plants are going to struggle. So I very rarely dig my soil other than to put plants in. What I prefer to do, and what works better, is to give it a yearly thick munch of really good quality compost, and that will help keep that light fluffy texture. And sometimes I say to new gardeners, treat your soil as if it's a cake that you've just baked. You don't want to trample all over it. You want to keep all those air particles and moisture and goodness, the sweet fruitiness in that soil, and not be walking roughshod over it, digging it up twice a year and causing a right mess, because you just don't need to. So there we have it, the beginner's guide to understanding your soil type to make you better gardeners. If you've liked this video, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications, and if you've got comments on soil types, ask them below. I've been Garden Ninja, thanks for watching, happy gardening.